Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 243 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and we have a very special stream for you guys today. It's actually kind of a two-part stream. We're going to do an episode of GameFace first. However, it is a very short episode of GameFace. We just have 3 topics because we just did a show on Thursday. And then we're going to take a break. We're going to dip to black, and it'll take us a minute or two to set up for the Sifted Video Game Fantasy Draft for 2021. Not only that, we will be launching the Sifted Fantasy Challenge today, live on the site. That's at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. So right around the time we're wrapping up GameFace 243 and getting ready for our draft, the Sifted Fantasy Challenge will be live for you guys to take part in. Now, I will say this. Don't leave the stream and go make your picks. Wait and listen to Matt and I discuss this stuff because it was a very, very interesting draft that Matt and I have done. And I think you're going to want to hear our discussion before you decide to make your picks. But anyway, first off, we're going to do an episode of GameFace. As I said, Matt Kyle is alongside me. What's going on, Matt?
Not much. It's good to have something to look forward to tomorrow.
Yeah. The adults taking over finally.
Yeah.
Taking away the kid's credit card finally.
Taking the keys back. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be nice. I'll sleep very well tonight, knowing that the world is going to get back to normal tomorrow.
But we're never going to get that seat back in the way we had it, though.
That's probably for sure. But anyway, as you can tell, I am not running TriCaster today as I did on Thursday. We have Jared in today, thank God, because there is no way I could have ever done the draft while I was working the TriCaster. So we got Jared back in the house today to handle switching duties for us. We got a great episode of GameFace, and I'm really excited about our draft coming up right after. Let's just get straight into the show. We're going to kick things off with, I think, a game that has been on every episode of GameFace for probably the last 2.5 months. And that game is Cyberpunk 2077. It is the game that just keeps on giving. First, it kept giving because it looked awesome. Then the game came out, and since then, it has just been one story after another. And really the big development this week was that Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who we have a lot of admiration for, he does some of the best reporting in the games industry. He published a story about pretty much the whole Cyberpunk 2077 story. What most people focused on, though, were what happened after launch and what the developers felt as they were working on the game. But really, the article just goes all the way back to the beginning. Huge revelations in this, I think, for a lot of people. Before I ask you how you were surprised by it, I'm just going to kind of supply the crib notes version, kind of the big bullet points from the article. Probably the one that hit me the hardest was that development of the game did not start in earnest until 2016. We were under the impression that this game at least had like a team working on it, working on like pre-pro for many years before that, because they had announced the game 8 years ago. But they put out that trailer and apparently just sat on it and didn't do anything on the game for another couple years. So in some ways I was like, wow, I feel like I was misled. But then in some other ways I was like, okay, now that kind of explains why the game was so broken. The other bullet point that really hit me hard was that all the demos for the game were faked, including the demo at E3 2018, which, you know, full in the press. And I think if you go back and look at our discussions on that, Matt, back whenever we saw that demo, we said that it could have been faked. We said that they sat there at a PC and wiggled the mouse, but we did not know 100% for sure if it was real.
Well, and also remember, like, you know, and I mean, I wasn't super shocked at the 2016 thing. Because a lot of times I will say stuff that, like, you know, just because we see some trailer or some footage or an announcement does not mean they're actually working on this stuff. Mm-hmm. And, you know, same with GTA. You know, when I sit there and say, like, yeah, Last of Us 2 isn't coming out next year, it's coming out like 4 years later, and it does, it's because those trailers are just a lot of times done out of house. And there are a couple of major anticipated games that I have learned, you know, in confidence that, like, yeah, they aren't real. Like, they're not real games.
You mean they're just trailers?
They're just trailers to gin up interest, and maybe they'll get made if the response is good enough. But, like, the trailers are there to convince you that something is in the pipeline already. But a lot, you know, especially in the AAA space, a lot of this stuff is driven by marketing more than creativity. We know that, but it's like the extent of the power that the marketing department has over a AAA publisher's direction really can't be overstated.
Yeah, I mean, you always follow the money. Anytime stuff happens, and this is just in life, people, anytime something happens that you just cannot understand why it happened, it's almost always the money. Follow the money. And that's where you'll find where most stuff that's really confusing, why it has happened that way. It almost always comes down to cash. Matt, how do you feel about, and now I will say this. So CD Projekt Red did respond to some of this stuff, and I do want to make sure that I share their opinion, whether I believe it or not. I think it's only editorially prudent to at least share their rebuttal. And the thing that hit me the hardest was really that they had faked the demos of the game. And CD Projekt Red replied saying, well, yeah, they weren't actually the game that we were playing wasn't a part of the game, but it was a playable demo that we built. And most of the stuff that we showed was ended up in the final game. And in fact, there ended up being more than that in the final game. And I would agree with that last part. Everything that was shown in that 2018 demo, at least most of the stuff I remember, did end up becoming a part of the game. And there were some things that weren't shown in that demo that are a part of it as well. So that part I get. But how do you feel about that, Matt? Do you think from that perspective, it's okay to quote unquote fool the press with a fake demo?
I don't think it's okay, but I think it happens more often than we might like to think.
Yeah.
And as a part of the, it's part of why you see things like the, Puddlegate or the Witcher 3 lighting changes, or sometimes that is a legit demo of whatever's in progress, and they end up having to downscale or change stuff just because of the nature of the hardware, what they can optimize. But sometimes I think we are just shown stuff that has no basis in fact in relation to the project that is actually being made to be put on the disc. I feel like something like that probably happened with BioShock Infinite. I feel like the BioShock Infinite 2012 E3 demo was not a real thing.
I think I would agree with that. So. Yeah. And I would also argue that is a case where the game did not end up including and being what that initial demo had shown.
There's a lot of different. There's some videos on the YouTube. Okay.
I say that all the time.
But there's videos there you can look at where they compare what's in the actual final game and what's in the demo from the E3 demo, and they're different projects. They're different game, and some of that might have just been we know Rod Ferguson came in and basically whipped everything into shape to get shipped. You got to ship something and got to do it now. And so a lot of that might have been in there and got cut away. And it could have been a legitimate demo of what they were working on at the time. But it always felt to me like that was a lot of wishful thinking in an E3 theater. Yeah. And I think that happens more often than we might think.
And maybe that phrase kind of puts things in perspective. E3 theater, because it is theater, like it or not. That's really what E3 is. That doesn't mean that I condone what CD Projekt Red did. And I definitely do not. I do feel like I was misled. I feel like, okay, if they made that decision at first and then they see the response to that game, which was just overwhelmingly positive, maybe then you should step in and be like, hey, just want to really be straight up with you guys. I know you're digging the game, but, this was a slice of the game that we constructed separately from the game. I just want to set, expectations accordingly. I think people would have appreciated that. I don't think people would have been angry about it. I think they'd have been like, thank you for being honest. Maybe more developers should do something like that. So I'm really confused at why, after the response to it was so overwhelmingly positive, that they didn't say something at that point. But it is what it is.
They're making a bet. They're just basically saying we're betting we can get this done
risk
the way
reward,
we showed it to be, and they didn't. And look, the fact that this is news still shows how often that bet gets made and delivered on. If you win your bet in that situation, we'll never know what happened. We'll never know that there was a disparity there. And I think it seems like, and that seems to be kind of the case with the Sony problem they had with being pulled from the store. It sounds like, once again, that's what they did there, where they provide, the day one patch will fix a bunch of this stuff, even though that's not fixed in the build we submitted for certification. It sounds like that happens relatively often, but usually developers come through on what they say that day one patch will be. In this case, it didn't happen, and that's unusual.
Yep.
So here we are.
And then the biggest point of contention for the game, for for us and for our audience in general is just how broken the game was. And a lot of people are like, how did CD Projekt Red not know that this game was so busted before it released it? Well, the answer is it did know. Jason Schreier's report, he talked to, I think it was 20
something QA people.
Yeah, 20 current or former employees who had worked on the game. And they all said that everybody knew that the game was a mess.
QA always knows. Like it doesn't even games that are not bug ridden, the most solid games in the world. If you find a weird little bug in there in like some game that was released rock solid, if you talk to a QA person who worked on that game, they know that bug is there.
No, yeah.
They know.
Well, then CD Projekt Red's response to that, instead of saying, no, we thought it was good. It looked good to me. I played it and it was okay, or making up some excuse like, oh, we certified the wrong version or whatever. He basically just said, you talked to 20 people out of 500. That was his excuse for it.
And that's like backwards logic, because like if you're talking to such a small sample size should make you more likely to run into people that don't
exactly
know all those
all
things.
20 of them should not have the same story.
Every single person, 20, you pick 20 random out of 500, you should at least have 2 or 3 that didn't know about all those bugs and those problems, but everyone did. A random sampling like shows that like everybody knew. That means it was. And also, you think QA people don't talk to each other? Like that's QA teams are very tight knit usually.
Well, then he went on to brag that after the game was released and the reviews came out and everybody knew that it was buggy, they still sold another 5 million copies, and he was proud of that. He's like, well, you're basically blowing it out of proportion because most people don't care, obviously, because another 5 million people bought it after everyone told him it was a buggy piece of whatever. So
part of that, I think, is because like we hear like games are full of bugs or like, but the number of times we read about people saying that on the internet or whatever, and then you play the game and it really is that buggy. That's like once a year, once a generation. Like the only comparison I have for this game would be like New Vegas, where like it really didn't work very well on the 360.
Certain platforms,
at launch, and it's just I wasn't ready. I knew there'd be bugs in this game. That's just how CD Projekt rolls. But I wasn't ready for how bad, even on the next gen systems. And then like you see the footage from the vanilla last gen systems, and it's just like, this is not.
I mean, it's unconscionable that they would release those versions. It just is. There's no excuse for it. The fact that CD Projekt Red is trying to defend itself at all from this report, to me, is disgusting.
And kind of throwing the QA people under the bus.
Yeah, this is the time to be contrite. This is finally your moment where you're like, man, we screwed up. Yeah. Like, this was your chance. Like, it's all laid out on the table now. Jason Schreier did his report. He's going to find everything. So it's out there now. Everybody knows everything that happened. Nothing worse can happen now except for you making a mistake in how you message it. And that's exactly what CD Projekt Red did. They just doubled down and dug themselves a bigger hole. So my question is, what kind of damage has been done to CD Projekt Red? Can it be fixed? Will people forget about it when the next Witcher game rolls out? I know this, CD Projekt Red's fans were insane, like literally like psycho insane. I don't know if those people even have turned on the studio at this point. I don't know, but what do you think?
I wish I had a parallel. I wish I had a parallel to like something where things were clearly one way and crazy one way, and there's people that were such fans of it they refused to admit that the crazy thing was really happening. Anyway, I don't know. Like I feel like most people I know, most rational people that play games, like we do have a tendency as gamers to sort of have a short memory when it comes to things we're excited about. But I know even me, speaking as a giant Witcher fan, as a CD Projekt fan, as someone who there's a shelf you can't see on camera, but this shelf right here, it's just Witcher stuff. Like I collect Witcher everything. I have Witcher stuff in the other room. I have framed art of it. I'm going to look real. Probably I'll play it at launch because of this show. But like the next Witcher game, like if I was just like a private consumer, I would be waiting like a month on that shit. I'd be like, no, I'm not buying that at launch. I'm waiting to see what people say about it. I'm waiting to see what Jim Sterling has to say about it. Like, frankly, like I don't wait for Jim Sterling's opinion on a lot of things. But on that one, like I kind of like to know what Jim thinks. But Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot more caution around their next project. You're going to have, a lot of skepticism, and the Twitter conversation doesn't necessarily define what mainstream sales will be. But like when they put their next trailer up for whatever the next project is, like the replies are just going to be skepticism from top to bottom. It's just gonna be like, oh, when are you gonna actually work on it though? It's like gonna be like it writes itself. And you're right. Like the only response here is we got caught.
Contrition.
Like,
yeah.
We fucked up. Like there is no other answer to this. And like I don't know what you think you're doing by saying literally anything else. You're done. We got you. Like Schreier nailed you. Like we know. Yeah,
once that report's out, that's it. No one's gonna believe you if you lie.
We've played the game.
Yeah.
Like what? So Sony pulled the fucking game off their store. Like, what do you need?
I mean, your parallel was pretty accurate, man. You're right. It's like CD Projekt Red thinks that it can live in this alternate universe of alternative facts, and no one is gonna like care. Yeah. And they're like, if we just say it enough. And enough of our fans listen to us, they'll believe it, and we'll be off the hook. So
repeat the big lie, and you get them to buy one big lie, and every other big lie is easier. After
makes it easier,
but it doesn't look like it's working here.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, although I don't know, based upon what CD Projekt Red said, it doesn't sound like many people returned the game, Matt. Mm-hmm. Their rebuttal, they were like, you know what? People don't think it's as broken as you guys do because they're not returning the game.
Well, no, I don't. I know they said that, but I think they're wrong. I think I didn't return my copy of the game. And the reason
I didn't either,
because I assume they're going to fix it.
But still, people aren't returning it, which is how you really hurt CD Projekt Red.
But if June rolls around and I still haven't gotten any of those patches up, I'm going to start making some questions. Like, probably too late to refund it by then. But I've stopped playing it. Like I'm waiting for it to be fixed before I go back to it. I don't feel like, and they've in their track record with The Witcher 1 did not launch in tremendous shape. It was a great game when it first came out.
Neither did The Witcher 3, to be honest. And
they put out the enhanced editions of the first two games, and they did a lot of patches and stuff, and the DLC on Witcher 3 was great. Like, they have a history of eventually making good, or at least making the game they put out into the game you wanted it to be after about 6 months or to a year of patching and further work. So I'm willing to give them that on side. I wish they'd stop. I wish they'd just get it right the first time, of course. And this is the worst they've ever done. Mm-hmm. But I will give them, kind of the slight benefit of the doubt in the sense that they've done it before. And I will wait and see if, Cyberpunk Enhanced Edition is something worth playing. And if not, I will be much more careful with my money with them in the future. But like we said last week, that only happens about once every 5 years. So, what you don't really need to worry about. It's not like you're talking about like a major publisher really in terms of like output. The other thing I think they need to do is they need to give the DLC away for free.
I would agree with that. They need to make goods. They have to do them. And look, I finished it, so I'm not going back until it's fixed and they release the DLC and the multiplayer.
New content, yeah.
For me, I finished the campaign. I finished pretty much all the side missions I cared to finish. So I'm good. I'm done with that game until they release new content.
The other thing I would say is like, maybe look real hard at whether it's worth finishing that multiplayer mode.
Yeah.
It might be better to just move on from this.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the multiplayer mode if they couldn't get the campaign tightened up the way they needed to. Nox Etermitis, and I know I mispronounced that wrong, says they're still going to give it Game of the Year at the awards this year. You think so?
Oh, like the Game Awards?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I think other things will come out by then. I think there's a strong chance. We'll get into this in the draft, but I feel like there's a strong chance a couple of things that will make everybody forget all about Cyberpunk, especially the journalists who are voting for it. When the time comes, like there's some heavy hitters coming, I think, and as long as those don't slip.
I mean, for the game to win Game of the Year, it would be such a stain.
Yeah, you might get like, I don't know. The award that like No Man's Sky got this year, like best support or whatever that was, like ongoing game or whatever.
Because it's not going to win like best RPG. Like this past year, it was a really weak year for RPGs. Next year, not the case. So it's not going to win that. So
I'll tell you straight up, like assuming it makes it this year, best RPG is Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, really?
That's what's going to win from my experience with the easy access,
early access,
easy allies. Just my experience with the early access, like if they continue on the trend that they're on with that game when they finish it, when it comes out the final version, that is going to be one of the best RPGs I've played in my entire life. Like, I love what I played of that game so far.
Wow.
And we'll get into that.
Some big words, man.
We'll get into that. I think they nailed the D&D 5e system
that makes me very excited to hear. I have not played it, so
it's I think it's phenomenal. I like in terms of like being an early access build, it's still pretty buggy and crashes all the time. But like it's already more stable than Cyberpunk. So it's a year. And they came out. It was a year out.
That's great to hear.
I am very, very bullish on the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, and I think it's going to be so good that people forget all about Cyberpunk as an RPG.
Okay, to kind of wrap up this topic, Matt, what do you think the long-term damage will be to CD Projekt Red? Do you expect the next Witcher game to not sell as well, or do you think it's going to all be forgotten?
I think the next Witcher game will sell just fine. And in fact, I think it might sell a little better because you'll have new Witcher fans off the back of the Netflix series, which will probably be have finished by then. But
maybe over by the time we get another game.
Either that or it's going to be in like season 6. Yeah. Henry Cavill's going to be like almost 50 playing a Witcher. But I don't know. Like I think people will approach them more skeptically. There will be true believers, obviously, but the skepticism will be a little more up there. I think the press will be less likely to hype the game blindly the way they did with Cyberpunk and be willing to be like, well, we saw what happened with Cyberpunk, so hopefully da-da-da-da-da.
I mean, that's a good point. How is the press going to react to CD Projekt Red's games going forward? Do you think that they will be cautious and more guarded and maybe not as to praise its projects?
There will be no chance that previews of whatever their next big game is will not constantly bring up Cyberpunk. As like, we saw what happened here. It took them for however long to get that into shape. So we wonder what this is going to look like when it comes out.
Don't you feel like we're going to be hearing that forever about every game? I mean, it's always going to be pointed to now. Well, remember Cyberpunk, don't get too excited.
I think it will mainly be in relation to games that seem very ambitious and sort of like a dream game. Like, I don't think anyone's going to say that about the next Assassin's Creed. Like we know.
Unless it becomes crazy revolutionary.
Unless it's like some kind of weird, crazy, we rebooted the whole idea again. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see like anything that has like massive like ambition and sort of like, it's a dream game. Like I think as like Beyond Good and Evil 2 moves forward, you might just take another Ubisoft example. Like you might see like previews of that be like, this looks like an amazing like thing. We've never played anything like it before, but we also thought that about Cyberpunk and look what happened. But like, like known quantities, not so much. Like I don't think like Breath of the Wild 2 is going to get a lot of skepticism on it. It's like we know what that's about. I think the really ambitious, like pie in the sky stuff is going to have to be approached with a little more jaundiced eye from here on out. And maybe we could start applying the same logic we're applying to Cyberpunk to Star Citizen. Anyone? Just saying. You want to talk about the grift?
It is a big freaking grift.
Like, I don't think. I mean, obviously, that's not a scam by definition of the word. I mean, there's a game, there's an alpha-ish thing you can play, but I backed that game 9 years ago, and like,
I'm sorry, Matt.
Where's Squadron 42? Like, I just wanted another.
They just said that it's not coming out for like ever.
Years.
They're like, Squadron 42 is nowhere close to being done.
There's people No, of course not. There's people on that Reddit that are still trying to make excuses for why it didn't hit alpha last fall. And I'm like, it's not going to hit alpha until 2023. People, if we ever get it all. Most of the people that shot motion capture for that game are going to be dead by the time it comes out.
It's true.
Yeah,
like Cinetike makes a good point in the chat. He says that the press also wants views, and people were eating up Cyberpunk preview content like hotcakes. So he is right. I mean, the press is a little bit culpable in this. I try to look at how I reported on it and see if I was guilty of it as well. I didn't report on it to like get viewers or anything like that. I really was impressed with the game.
Yeah, you were impressed by the demo, but like, I mean, you can still get the clicks and bring up the idea that there was a problem with the previous game they made, and in fact, that'd probably get you more clicks as a controversy.
True.
And I don't think I don't think the press knew what was going on behind the scenes here. to any large.
Oh, no. I mean, the other thing is that they're in Poland. So I don't know any journalists that kind of have like sources at CD Projekt Red.
Not English speaking, as far as I know.
Yeah. And that was another point of contention. They were saying that, some of the developers were speaking Polish around the studio, and it made other people who didn't speak Polish think that they were talking behind their backs. That seemed a little bit maybe flimsy. It's like, if I speak English and I'm working in an office and there's not a big group of people there, I'm going to speak English probably with the other people who speak English. So I can understand why employees might feel a little uncomfortable about it, but that's one of those things where it's like, I think he dedicated too much time in the article to something that maybe wasn't quite as important.
Also, make friends with some Polish people. And
learn how to speak Polish.
Or just have them translate for you. Make some allies that speak the local language. Anyone who's played an RPG knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, we're trying to give CD Projekt Red a fair shake here. We always do that on GameFace. But the bottom line is they released a broken game, and they knew they were going to release a broken game, and that is inexcusable. So I personally do think there's going to be damage to CD Projekt Red. I don't think it's going to be massive or maybe even all that significant because it takes the studio so long to release another game.
But I think
we're not going to see the next Witcher game for, I'm guessing, 3 or 4 years. By then, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I don't really remember that. Yeah.
We've probably got like one more CD Projekt Red game on the next gens, on these current PS5.
And it'll probably be towards the end of the gen when we get the next Witcher game. Yeah.
We'll probably have the updated systems by then.
It could be even a bridge game at that point. Yeah.
The next one may not work on the systems we have now.
Although I'll tell you, Matt, I think this generation is going to last like 10 years.
That would be nice.
I just think it is. The law of diminishing returns, it just gets worse and worse. Like one of the questions on Pachter Factor this week was, did they bail on the PS4 and the Xbox One too early? And I think if you look at it, they kind of did.
They absolutely did.
But they started underpowered, as you've brought up many times. And I do agree with that. But there is still more headroom for those systems.
Yeah, but I mean, once you got the X and the Pro, I think you resolved a lot of those problems. And I mean, when I first got my 4K TV and I was showing off some games to my some friends that didn't really pay attention to game stuff, and that was like 2017, early 2018. And like I showed them Witcher 3 on to keep it in the CD Projekt Red world. I showed them like Witcher 3 and Horizon and Battlefront 2 and stuff on both. And like every single one of them were just like, why are they making new systems? Like this still looks amazing. Like they're like, I'd be happy with this for years yet, and it's just going to get better. And then I know the frame rate is takes hits once in a while in some of these games, but like if you can do Last of Us Part 2 on that hardware, why are you selling me a $500 system this year?
Because let's be honest, Matt, none of the third parties have hit that level.
No.
Not even close. You look at Ghost of Tsushima. No third parties even in the same league as that game. So they're all the bulk of the developers who are making games for those two systems, they aren't even close to like maxing them out yet. So there was definitely some headroom. I'm glad that the PS5 and the Series X is here because I love them. But I do think that there was maybe a little more juice to squeeze out of them. And you could
have gone another year, I think.
Yeah. And also I think seeing the jump, or in some people's perspective, the lack thereof from PS4 to PS5 and Xbox One, Xbox Series X, like, that's why I think this cycle is going to be 10 years, Matt, because it's going to get smaller and smaller as it goes. And so I just think that they're going to stick with these longer. I think they're going to be able to get a lot of headroom out of these systems as well as they learn to write to the metal. And so I just think that ultimately this generation is going to last a long, long time.
Yeah. And I do wonder, like, as I play the new systems, like, I noticed the differences in part because of I recognize the HDR on some of the old games, the backwards compatible stuff, and they run better and everything loads way faster. But like, I recognize that in part because I spent so much time playing stuff on the old systems. Yeah. And I wonder if someone who just plays more casually is going to play on the new systems and notice all that as much as I would.
Probably not. Casual folks, probably not.
Yeah, and in turn be like, I paid $500 and it still kind of looks the same except for Miles Morales and
Pachter doesn't even have a 4K TV yet, believe it or not. And he has really no interest in upgrading to 4K at all. He can't see the difference. Yeah, he's just like,
he has a boat.
I know.
4K TV.
It's not. That's my point, though. It's not about money. Mm-hmm. It's with him. He's like, he doesn't want to waste money because he feels like it's a waste of money. He's like, I can't see the difference. I go into the stores. He's like, until TV. And
I don't want to waste money, says man who has a.
I know.
Come on.
I know. But he's saying like, until content is in 4K. And I do agree with this. Like the bulk of the time I spend using my new 4K TV, I can't tell the difference between it and my plasma TV because everything's at 1080p.
I mean, I can tell the difference because HDR. Like the resolution is not as important to me. Like,
but again, the broadcast has to have that. And 1080p doesn't have HDR. Like the broadcast don't have HDR.
The broadcast, I mean, you can apply HDR to anything.
Yeah.
But like my monitor for my gaming PC is 1440p, and I don't sit here and wish that I had 4K instead of 2K. I wish I had HDR.
Yeah.
You know,
yep.
That's a more important upgrade to me.
Yeah. So Pachter, he doesn't care. He's like, once like football games and everything's in 4K TV, basically is broadcast in 4K, that's when he's going to get one. So,
I hope he gets to see that day, because I don't know how long that's an overhaul of
everything,
broadcast standards,
infrastructure. Yeah. It's why game trailers was producing HD content for almost 2 years before MTV went HD. In fact, when MTV was finally ready to broadcast in HD, they came to us to ask us about the cameras they should buy, all the sound equipment that they should get, like the networking stuff that they needed for their edit. We designed all that for MTV.
Even when we went HD, we never got the game capture up to that standard. It was always either 720 or 1080i upscaled.
Yeah, well, back then, I mean, GT was 720p too, but that's
but there was just no way to do that. It was too expensive to upgrade, and like you were lucky if the station was 720p back then.
Well, back then we had to haul around like these scan converters that weighed like 60 pounds.
It was like a whole wheeled suitcase thing.
Yep, we had a kit that we put together that we would take out on the road. We take a camera guy with us. He'd have to lug that thing around like Germany.
Everything, but it was like wiring up a bomb. It was ridiculous. You had to explain it to the TSA every time, like what it was.
Because they're like, "What is this thing?"
It looked like
a bomb.
Yeah, it was very. It was because just everyone had to slap it their own together. There was no like off the shelf solution to that. You had to kind of come up with it.
Yeah.
To this, I mean, I am partly like every time I like pull out my Elgato for something, like I'm partly like amazed and partly angry at it. You know, where the fuck were you in 2011?
It would have changed your life. It absolutely would have changed your life.
Just throw it in a bag, and then we're off to Texas, wherever we're going for our segment. It was like no, because
that is one thing I'm proud of working in this industry is that we lead the way. We led the way with 4K too. Like I guarantee you, if I were still at MTV right now, they would be coming to us asking us how to work with 4K. We are the pioneers. Streaming, Twitch. It's so funny now how everybody just knows what Twitch is. Like all my buddies DJ on Twitch. They're like, oh, this new thing called Twitch. I'm like, bro, I've been on Twitch for like 8 years. Like, but everyone
we were doing Twitch stuff in 2009.
Yeah.
When it was Justin TV.
When it was Justin.tv. Yeah. So look, we drive it. We are driving media adoption. We're the reason. Gaming is the reason people get 4K TVs. It's not to watch sports because you can't watch it in 4K. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we drive media forward. I think ultimately, again, gaming will drive broadcast forward. But you're right, Matt. It's going to be a long time because they have to replace everything. The outlay, the capital expenditures are insane. So after COVID, now it's just delayed another year. Yeah. So
and the people laying out the money for that at like the networks are like, we just finished paying to get everything HD. Yeah. Now you want to make everything more.
We just paid off all that 1080p gear. It's true. But that's the nature of the beast. You got to keep moving. And gaming and the stuff that we do, we're nimble enough that we can do it. But when you're talking about the Titanic trying to turn that massive ship, it's not as easy. So anyway, we should move on because we do need to get through this episode pretty quickly before we get to our draft. Next up, we're going to talk about PlayStation exclusive properties that we had feared may be going away, but maybe not so fast. So this week, Sony San Diego, and you guys probably mostly know Sony San Diego for doing the MLB franchise, and it has done an amazing job on that baseball simulation franchise for PlayStation across the years. And people are kind of wondering, Sony has been expanding some of its studios, picking some up here and there. Everyone was wondering what's going to happen with Sony San Diego. Well, this week, Sony San Diego announced that it was going to basically pivot and it was going to start working on PlayStation properties that are not its own, meaning non-MLB properties. And that happened to just coincide with some mentions about Uncharted, the next Uncharted possibly being developed there. And then the very next day, Killzone, there was kind of this press release that went out basically saying, Guerrilla saying, all right, we're done with Killzone. We're moving on. We've got Horizon, these other projects that we're working on, basically saying Killzone's dead unless somebody picks up the mantle. And so the original rumor is that Sony San Diego is going to work on Uncharted 5. Matt, how do you feel about this? It feels very similar to Playground Games working on Fable. It's a studio that doesn't have a ton of experience working in the genre, but the studio is pretty skilled. Where do you come in on this?
Well, look, I don't think I've made a huge secret of the fact that I think Uncharted is basically a lost cause after Amy Hennig left the company.
Yeah.
She was that series and those characters, and I don't think Uncharted 4 pulled it off at all. I did like Lost Legacy, but that was mostly dealing with different characters. I think the story of Nathan Drake is over for me. Like, I'm sure they will make, if Uncharted 5 comes out, I'm sure it will be about Nathan Drake, but
you're not interested in that.
I don't know if I care. To me, that story only went through Uncharted 1 through 3, and 4 was a lost cause to me. And I would play more Lost Legacy style stuff because I thought I like Chloe, and I thought they nailed that. That was a different writer.
It was smart. Yeah.
That wasn't Druckmann. That was a different writer.
Yep.
If they bring him down to San Diego, I'll pay attention. But like,
which they may.
Like, I'll need to see what they do. In the same way that I was sort of skeptical about Sly 4, because Sly 4 was not made by Sucker Punch. It was made by...
Oh.
It was.
I can't remember the name. It
begins with a G.
I bet you someone in chat will tell us.
It's not Gaikai. It's like some weird... if I remember right, it sounds like Japanese name or something sort of. But
that's PlayStation Now, I think, is what you're thinking of.
Gaikai is the streaming service they bought. But I can't remember the name of the developer for Sly 4.
I can't either.
They did okay. It was not amazing.
You look at like Gears, Judgment, stuff like that. It's always like, it's not so bad that it offends you, but it's also not really the next proper entry in the franchise lineage.
Yeah, it's sort of like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's disposable, but it's nice if you want it. It's kind of like...
It's like I can go back in that world again if I want.
Yeah, it's about all I'll give it, Mm-hmm. So, like, maybe in terms of the Killzone rumors, I could not possibly care less about what happens to Killzone. So, sure, like, I get, Sony doesn't really have a strong first-person shooter. So
it doesn't.
It warrants exploring, but I never felt like Killzone ever found its feet.
I would argue that, to me, the better game for Sony San Diego to work on would be Killzone, because first-person shooters are much easier to build than a sprawling action adventure with an open world or an action RPG where you're dealing with all those systems that are running under the hood. I would have more confidence in them working on a first-person shooter.
Well, and also maybe more importantly, in comparison, Killzone's story is going to be a lot lighter lifting. You're not going to judge Killzone too hard by its narrative.
Yeah, it's plot, it's voice acting, it's writing, all that stuff. Yeah, far more important in a new Uncharted game. I would agree with you that I feel like I'm kind of over Nathan, but also guaranteed that Nathan will be the star of the game, because I don't think most people agree with us, Matt. I think most people love Nathan Drake. Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people make the distinction between 1, 2, and 3 and 4 that I do. Mm-hmm. To me, it's 4 sticks out like a sore thumb as being a very different take on the characters, and I don't like it very much. Also, with the movie coming out, I would think that it's going to whatever they make is going to be like the young Nathan Drake Chronicles kind of thing. You're gonna recenter it on the Tom Holland version of the character and sort of go from there.
Let's talk about Killzone now, Matt. You just said you don't give a crap. Right now, we're seeing the crazy E3 2005 fake. Here's the first fake demo, actually. Here's the most notorious fake demo in the history of video games.
I can't see the monitor anymore.
Oh, okay. So this one is legitimately fake. That was
a literal bullshot.
Yeah, it was never, ever a part of the game. And the game that came out looks nothing like this, plays nothing like, which is a shame, because the reason this got so much hype was because it looks freaking awesome.
Amazing.
It still looks amazing. I'm watching it right now. It still
looks better than almost anything we have. Again, that's another part of that same lesson. Like, these companies are not your friends and they want your money. Like every
we say it all the time. Yeah.
Every single piece of media that gets put out on these things, you have got to look at them with a skeptical eye every single time, and that goes for any product someone's trying to sell you. Believe me. Like I go through that with a toy world too. You know, this is the new third party Transformers figures. And it comes out, it's like the fucking leg doesn't work right. Like, you know, who did do that? You always have to pay attention, and you never can assume. Some companies are more trustworthy than others, but like they've all done that shit. You know, and Killzone was a long time ago, so everyone's kind of forgotten about it. But like, that was amazing at the time.
Oh, it blew my freaking doors off. Like it did. No, and everybody walked out of there being like, there's no way that's real. Literally, this wasn't like.
But Sony said it was.
Yeah, but people did not get fooled by the Killzone demo the way that, quote unquote, they got fooled by the Cyberpunk demo.
The people who were there didn't. The people on the internet, like you had the true believers were going to, tout that was real the whole time until it wasn't.
Yeah, I hounded Phil Harrison about those fake trailers for months after that. Yep. It just so happened that like I ended up running into him at like 3 events in a row, and we got interviews with him every time, and I just laid into him and put him on the spot, and he stood there and lied. He stood there and lied. He even said that the MotorStorm trailer was real, and he's like, "Look at the game. We're showing the game." I'm like, "It looks nothing like that, Phil." I'm like, "Where's the mud on the windshield?" He's like, "Oh, well, we didn't have everything in there." I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, it was just madness. I was like, am I living in some alternate universe where facts don't matter anymore? It was a precursor.
A lot of those early, like I said about a Harry Potter too, like a lot of those early things are just proof of concept, and they try to match them.
Yep. Now, I will definitely disagree on Killzone as far as your perspective. Like, I do care if it comes back. I thought Killzone on the PlayStation 3 was the best exclusive shooter on PlayStation 3. It has one thing I'll say about Killzone.
The other ones.
Well, there were the Resistance games, and there was like 3 of those. And
I like Resistance 2 better than any of the Killzones.
Really?
Yeah.
What I liked about Killzone is that it felt different to play from every other shooter. It didn't feel like Battlefield. It didn't feel like Call of Duty. It didn't feel like some crazy sci-fi. Like the characters had like a lot of weight to them, and they weren't very fast. So it was a little more strategic and a little less Twitch dependent.
Yeah, but I just don't. None of it hooked me. The world didn't hook me because
I'd agree with that.
I'm not a multiplayer person, so you're basically riding on the campaign for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I just didn't care. But you're right. I mean, you're right. It was weighty, and it felt very grounded and concrete, and it did have a unique feel. That's for sure. I just didn't care for it very much. I do think, from what little I played of the multiplayer special in Killzone 3, the weird little tweet sound when you got a headshot, that was very satisfying.
It was. Yeah. I forgot about that, but you remembered it. That's funny. So I did enjoy that Killzone. I agree with you. The campaign was not great, but it wasn't as bad as Killzone Shadowfall. No,
I mean, we learned how far you could fall.
Yeah.
For me, Resistance was always a more interesting world and a more interesting. I mean, Resistance's quality varied wildly from game to game because they kind of reinvented that wheel every time with all 3 of those games. But again, very campaign oriented for me, and so I thought the campaign of Resistance 2 was probably the most compelling exclusive shooter on the PS3, unless I'm forgetting another series that I can't think of.
I don't think so.
Weird to think how many of their teams were focused on making shooters, even just off that. Like the idea that Insomniac would not only make a shooter, but 3 of them in the same.
They wanted that COD money, man. Everyone's been chasing it for decades now. It's like everyone's trying to crack that nut. How do we make a shooter that we can sell 15 million copies of every year? And that's not even what Call of Duty. Call of Duty does like double that. Like they just want half.
And also feel free to put the Killzones and the Resistances on PlayStation again. Like I feel like
why not?
We should liberate them from PS3, please.
What I was getting at though is that because of Killzone Shadowfall, its lack of quality. I mean, it was really to me just a tech demo for PlayStation 4. They needed something that really showed off what it could do at launch, and they're like, "Can you get something together, Guerrilla?" Sure. Because of how that was handled.
Can we make that game we want to make after that?
Right. Exactly, though. I mean, that's pretty much what happened, right?
What happened, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, like, I won't lose any sleep if Guerrilla loses Killzone. To me, it showed.
I don't think Guerrilla will lose any sleep.
Yeah. Like, it showed that it doesn't care about it by the last release. So honestly, send it to somebody else who maybe has a fresh look, fresh eyes on it, and see what they can do with it. So I'm totally cool with Sony San Diego jumping on that project. And we'll just cross our fingers and hope something good comes out of it. And the same with Uncharted. I don't have much faith that a studio like theirs can handle an Uncharted game. Because the other part about Uncharted, Matt, is that there's this expectation on a technical level. Mm-hmm. Uncharted is one of those games that you get it, and maybe you're not like a big Indiana Jones fan and you don't care about the plot or whatever. It's like a technical marvel. It generally represents like the very best of whatever is happening at that moment in gaming as far as visuals are concerned. So
like even with my dislike of 4, like even there,
stunner.
you still, if you're not willing, if you're going to tackle Uncharted, you better be ready to step up to the Naughty Dog level.
Yeah.
Or don't bother.
Yeah. And so that does worry me as well, which again makes me think that Killzone is the smarter project for Sony.
Killzone's a safer bet. And they're never going to tackle the Sony IP that I want them to do, which is Colony Wars.
No, so, that's never coming back.
No. Unless the sequel to Star Wars Squadrons really blows up.
Yeah.
We're never seeing that.
I do think this is a boon for Sony, Matt, to have another studio under your wing creating exclusive games with your IP. It just guarantees another 2 to 3 games every 2 to 3 years coming exclusively to your system.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd like to see them go back to maybe some IP that have been left behind, like Sly. Like clearly Sucker Punch is done with that. You could maybe whip out a new Infamous at some point. Yeah. Like that feels like there's potential that was not fully tapped.
Yeah, because there are a lot of studios under Sony's wing that have really good IP that either have moved on from it or are probably ready to move on from it. Mm-hmm. Infamous, I think, is probably a great example of that. Like, I just don't see them making another one. So, queue it up with Sony San Diego and get cracking. So if that studio can bring us new entries and franchises we wouldn't have got otherwise, I think no matter what, it's a win.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our last topic of GameFace 243. I told you guys it was going to be a short episode. We got to get this awesome draft in. And we're going to talk about the legendary, the infamous Tomonobu Itagaki returning to video games. You guys may be wondering where he has gone. And for those of you who don't know who he is the guy who created Ninja Gaiden. He created the Dead or Alive fighting franchise.
He did the reboot of Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah.
The Ninja Gaiden the original Ninja Gaiden is from the 80s.
You mean like you're talking about the 2D versions. Yeah. He handled the 3D version of Ninja Gaiden, which became, a Game of the Year candidate. To me, still one of the best hack and slash games that I've ever played. And then he worked on...
Still holds up. It's on Series X backwards compatibility. Go play it.
It will always hold up, Matt, because of the combat.
Like $5. Go ahead.
Because of the combat. Again, why I'm a gameplay first guy, because when it's all said and done, what holds up more than anything is how
Although I will still say, they're doing the upscaling, and it still looks good.
Yeah.
Like, it still looks good.
Yeah.
The camera, perfect camera not included, as you said in the old review. Yeah. But it still looks great for what it is.
And it still plays great. Yeah. So he, obviously, that was one of his big projects. And then Ninja Gaiden 2, which wasn't as good. And then he left after Ninja Gaiden 2. And then
he did a lot of Dead or Alives.
And then he did a bunch of Dead or Alives, which is the skimpy fighting game. I was gathering B-roll for that today. I had forgotten what that game was like. I was like, wow, there's a lot of jiggle in this game. So anyway, after Ninja Gaiden 2, he left Koei Tecmo, and he started his own studio called Valhalla, and only released one game, and just by the skin of his teeth. It was a game called Devil's Third. It ended up being sent around to like 4 different publishers before it ever came out. It was supposed to be one of the last games THQ was going to publish before it folded, but he did finally release it as a Wii U exclusive.
Wii U exclusive. I had to get one of my friends in Canada to get me a copy of that because I knew that was going to be one of those Wii U games. It wasn't very good, but they didn't make a lot of them. Yep. It was going to be a collector's item, so I couldn't find it. It was sold out everywhere. So I think
we told people on GameFace to go buy it and never opened it. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what I did.
And I have it too, unopened. Yeah, and maybe someday it's worth a lot of money, but
maybe. Probably not. It's not
probably
very good,
not, but
because it's really bad. At some point, the worm turns, and the Nintendo collectors decide that it's time to get every Wii U game ever made, and then that's how the value skyrockets.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So that whole debacle with Devil's Third basically broke him in some ways. He left game development and has been teaching for the last 4 years. Matt, could you imagine having Itagaki as a teacher? I wonder if he wore the sunglasses in the classroom.
I think he definitely wore the sunglasses.
He hates being seen without his glasses, FYI. That's why he always wears them. He's like self-conscious about his eyes for some reason. I don't know why. But
I mean, he has have kind of like squinty eyes. Like I've seen him without the glasses on, but like it's not like bad. I mean, I think he just has very specific standards of how he looks, and he's got a brand to protect. And
well, when we shot the doc with him, one of the ground rules was you can't show me without my glasses on.
I mean, because I've seen him like take his glasses off, like up there, you've been drinking
like
all night at some point.
Interviews or
no, like if you're out at night, like I've been at like bars with them and like Mizuguchi and all those guys, and at some point he will take the glasses off and like rub his eye or something.
Yeah.
And he looks completely normal.
He does. Yeah. I don't know why he's so self-conscious about it. So, but anyway, he disappeared for 4 years. And so the other day I'm on Facebook, and I'm friends with him on Facebook because we've known each other for a long time. And he was like saying, I can't figure out how to use Facebook. They removed the notes. He's like, I have something important that I got to say to you guys. And then the next day, the story broke that he is coming back to game development, and he is starting his own studio called Itagaki Studios. Finally, he just decided to name it after himself. I don't know what took him so long. And he is, I would say, Matt, he is fishing for Phil Spencer right now. His quotes in his announcement basically were, and then someone did an interview with him afterwards, and he said, they asked him, like, do you want to make Xbox exclusive games again? And he was basically like, hell yeah, I'm all over it. They should call me. I can get a team together. I can pitch.
Somebody wants to get bought.
Yeah, I mean, he may want to get bought. He has tons of money, dude. Like, I don't think that he really is driven by money.
The stability of being a Microsoft.
I just think it's more. I just really with him, Matt. I just think it's ego. Like but
even an ego wants to cash out eventually. I mean, you wouldn't get bought until you've made a game or two and proven that the studio can do it.
And he does have a massive ego. But right now you're looking at Devil's Third, the last game that he created. And I'll say this, Matt, when I was watching this earlier today, gathering B-roll for the show, I was like, this game kind of gives me a Cyberpunk 2077 vibe. I was like, maybe he was way ahead of himself here as far as like the tone and the setting of the game, but it's just a very, very weird game. There's really no other way to describe it. It's like a third-person shooter that has like multiplayer elements, but like it's really a melee game, and the melee feels weird and disconnected, which is odd because it's an Itagaki game. So anyway, that's his last project. It's from several years ago. Matt, if you're Phil Spencer or anyone in a position of power who could make Itagaki's dreams come true, would you do it?
I'd want to see a demo first.
Like a demo, or would you want to see like a spec sheet of a game that he's working on?
I'd want to see tangible something.
He would have to have a team together already that has built something for you to see.
Yes, you would have to show me something playable. If I was in Phil's position, I would want to see and get my hands on something playable and see what they've got, because he can't make Ninja Gaiden again because he doesn't have the IP. He doesn't have that IP. Yeah. So you got to come up with something unique. You come up with something that plays to his strengths, but is something new, and it's got to be something that isn't too weird to sell mainstream. So yeah, I would be relatively cautious if I were Phil. And I like a lot of the games he's made. He defined a whole genre, I think, for multiple generations at this point. Like, you don't get stuff like the later Devil May Cries and Bayonetta and all that without him doing Ninja Gaiden and showing everybody how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, you probably don't get games like Ghost of Tsushima either. That really trickles down a long, long ways. So look, I'm not denying that he was influential, and he at one time made amazing games. And I agree with you, Matt. There is no way I would give Itagaki money unless he already had a team together. I would never, ever give him a big chunk of money and say, okay, go build your team and make this game. No way. Having been and spent a big chunk of time with Team Ninja towards the end of his tenure, like basically the vibe I got there was that like the older guys worshipped him and the younger guys wished that Hayashi-san was the boss. And they were very flattering of him in interviews and stuff like that. But when we weren't on camera, and I just saw how they interacted with him and how he interacted with them, like they seemed to be a little scared of him, to be honest with you. And so Phil Spencer knows that better than I do. I guarantee it. And the rest of the industry knows that as well. So I think he's going to have tough sledding trying to get any sort of a project off the ground, despite what he's done in the past. I think his reputation precedes him a little bit as far as what he's
good
like.
And bad.
Right. As far as who he is, who he's like to work for. And then, I mean, his reputation at this point is Devil's Third. So, somebody did that last time. He went to them with this idea for Devil's Third. They were like, you're Itagaki. Hot damn, yeah. Like, we'll make a game with you. Here's a bunch of money. And then 4 years later, 3 publishers later, 3 of which filed for bankruptcy, the game comes out as a piece of trash. So I don't know. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Itagaki. I feel bad because
I would be more willing to fund Kojima's next game.
Oh, yeah. Way quicker.
Much as I didn't like Death Stranding. Death Stranding was no Devil's Third.
Yeah, I mean, Death Stranding was a concept that isn't going to appeal to everybody, but it was very polished. Like, they executed the idea.
Yeah, they made the game.
And I don't know that Itagaki can necessarily do that anymore because he doesn't have the team anymore. Like I said earlier, the older guys worshipped him. They left with him and went to Valhalla. Kanematsu-san, there's 3 or 4 guys at Team Ninja that had been there since the beginning. They all left with him to go to Valhalla. And all that was left was all the junior developers and Hayashi-san. And then they went on to, partner with Nintendo and do a bunch of great stuff. I think Team Ninja certainly hasn't fallen since Itagaki left.
No, I mean, they faltered a little bit in the way, Ninja Gaiden 3 was not.
Yeah, that's true. Razor's Edge was not great.
But their redo of it on the Wii U was pretty good.
Yeah.
They patched it up pretty well.
They did.
And then their subsequent thing, they did a pretty good Dead or Alive, Dead or Alive 5. It's very, it's all microtransaction driven, but it's a good game for what it is. It's a good entry in the series. It's better than 4, I think. I mean, Team Ninja. Well, we won't blame them for Metroid. But
you might be able to. I mean, we don't know.
Metroid. I think they made Metroid under orders of
Yeah, I think that was Nintendo's idea that they executed.
I think they were literally just doing what they were told on that one.
And at that point, I think they needed the money, to be perfectly honest with you.
Probably true.
I mean, because Ninja Gaiden 3 tanked and Sigma didn't do great. Ninja Gaiden 2 didn't even do that great because it wasn't that great. So they had been on a tough streak there for a while, and it was kind of Nintendo to the rescue. And I think they've done a good job working with Nintendo. Obviously, the Muso stuff that they've done with them has been awesome. So I think it's worked out for both sides. And probably hasn't worked out for Itagaki in the end, but he also was the one making all the money for years and years and years, and he doesn't need to make it anymore. So I'm happy to hear that he's trying to come back to the industry. I do think he has something valuable to give to the industry still, and I do think he can still be innovative if he has the right team. But if I'm the one holding the checkbook and I'm the one who has to pull the trigger on it, no effing way. There's no way I would do it unless he, like you said, showed me a playable demo that I could play of what they're working on, and I was impressed with it. So whether he can do that or not, maybe he will dig into his chest of money and he'll self-fund some guys to work on something with him for a while and create that demo. I think it's highly doubtful. I think really what Mori's looking for is a handout.
Somewhat. I mean, the last thing he directed was, was 5 years ago. It was he hasn't done anything in half a decade, except he was on that Samurai Jack game.
Right. Yeah.
He was credited as
Combat something or other.
No, it was Supreme Advisor. Oh. That's what he was credited as.
Oh. So. I will say this, the combat in that game wasn't bad.
No, the combat
That's about the only part of it that wasn't bad.
The combat in that game was clearly made by fans of Ninja Gaiden. Yeah. And it worked. I mean, if you haven't played that Samurai Jack game, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's surprising, actually. Really barren looking, but the combat feels really good.
The combat works.
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
Solid.
Yep. So that's the latest on Itagaki-san. I do wish him well. I know a lot of people are kind of feel like he's a polarizing guy, but I will say this about him. He puts on a front in a lot of ways. Like once you get him away from the office and he's not around like his reports and he doesn't have to kind of put on the boss shoes, he does loosen up and he can be a fun guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he can be funny as well.
Yeah. And he's like, he's genuine in a lot of ways. When you get
legit.
Off camera,
what you see is what you get. Yeah, he does not change.
When we first met him after the first Ninja Gaiden, and like he found out who we were and who you were. I remember he whipped out his phone and he had a compressed video of your Ninja Gaiden 5 out of 5 review on his phone, so he could watch it whenever he wanted to feel better about himself. And I'm just like, that is great. Like that.
Our work here is done.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean, it shows me something just in the sense that, you can project that image publicly, but the fact that he would sit there with us and like kind of admit that, he has his own doubts as well. And he likes to remember that people like what he does. Like, that's a very humanizing thing. And I like that. I always thought that was cool.
I like him. A lot of people don't. And a lot of people that worked with him in Japan don't. You can just tell.
Sure. I mean, I do feel like he probably has a temper behind closed doors.
And that's probably how he gets his projects done, though. I mean, it's not the best management style, that's for sure. But
I feel like
it results sometimes.
I'd also feel like if you work with him, you probably have to listen to Aerosmith coming out of that office a lot. That can grate on you. But But I don't want to miss a thing that he makes.
So anyway, there you go. That's Tomonobu Itagaki, his future, as it may or may not be. I tend to think that this may come and go. We may never hear anything from him unless he decides to invest his own money to make it happen. So, and he could. So,
I mean, Microsoft could do worse than working with him. Like, I don't know, don't greenlight anything yet, but I would definitely take a look at it. I just feel like you better be sure that you're not walking into another Devil's Third situation.
Yep, you have to be careful. THQ got duped. THQ got duped.
Yeah,
good. They put
remember, I mean,
that game.
You forget, like you say, he left after Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden 2 was 2008.
I know.
It took 7 years to get that game out.
Yep. Yeah, because they did Sigma and all this other stuff on the side trying to make money. Mm-hmm. They milked Ninja Gaiden for all. Yeah,
but he didn't work on any of that. He
Sigma was Hayashi-san.
Yeah, he left right after that, and then Devil's Third was 8 years later in 2015. So like, that's it's not like the closest comparison I guess would probably be Kojima, where he left and 2 years later had a complete game out. Like Kojima
Konami
delivered. Kojima,
he did. Yeah. And there's Konami that is just helpless now without him.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Helpless without him.
Floundering around.
Yep, pretty much. Okay, it's time to get some Q&A. Get your questions in now. I'm not sure we're going to do Q&A after the draft, unless you have questions specifically about draft. We're not going to help you make your picks for the challenge, though. But anyway, if you have any general questions about gaming or anything we talked about today, get them into the chat now and we'll answer them. Here's one from Vincent. Going back to Sony San Diego, what's going on with MLB this year? Not only is it supposed to traditionally launch in 2 months and we haven't heard a peep, that was the year it was going to go multi-platform. That's a good point, Vincent. I had forgotten about that Sony had relented and was like, you know what, we're the only baseball game in town. Like, we should be making more money off of this baseball game. It is supposed to be multi-platform. And you're right. Like, when I was researching for this topic for the show, I could find no mention of the new MLB. Like, it's basically just completely disappeared and like ghosted. I can't find any information on a release date or anything like that other than the stories that it was going to be multi-platform. So, man, I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you feel confident that studio could make a good Uncharted or could make, a good Killzone, I might pull them off of MLB. I'm just being honest. I get it. You're saying it would go multi-platform this year, and that would mean better sales, more sales. I do understand that. But I still think that if you made a really good Uncharted game, you would sell more copies of that just to PlayStation 5 owners than you would sell copies of MLB across all platforms. So I don't know. I don't think that they would cancel it because that is a studio. That's what it built its name on, that studio, the MLB franchise. So I don't think that it's like canceled it. But it is strange. Normally it would be coming out here in a couple months and we haven't heard anything about it. So I wish I had more information for you, Vincent, but unfortunately I do not. Anything to add to that, Matt?
Not really, other than I would be sad to see the show go away just because I do like that series.
Yeah.
It's one of the only sports series I play regularly.
Yep. Surf Spider, thank you for Twitch Prime. And I know I missed a bunch of you guys earlier. Thank you guys. Anyone who subscribed during the show. Axel F, 1986, Mike's Q, thank you for Twitch Prime. You guys are all flipping awesome. We really appreciate it. Next question from Soundboy. What are the chances for a new Mario golf game? I'd say pretty good.
Okay. I mean,
they're running out of stuff.
Yeah, they got to do something. Probably not going to get another Mario Tennis anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, we already got a Mario Tennis. You're starting to figure out at this point what IP is left. And I think that's where your question's coming from. You're like, wait a minute, there aren't many IP left from Nintendo that hasn't been released for Switch. What is there? That's one of them. I would say, yeah. I'd say it's very likely that we're going to get one. I would also say that it's also very likely that they'll announce it and it will be released within 3 months of its announcement. So
yeah, that feels like a pretty solid like summer game. Like something they could announce in like a May Direct and like it comes out in July, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe the
and they're
Mario
great. I love
year.
those games. Like I love Hot Shots Golf, and that's basically all it is. It's Hot Shots in the Mushroom Kingdom. And I love arcade style golf games. So I'm all over it. If it has online play, I'm really all over it.
Could also be soccer.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't got that yet either.
Mario Strikers has been MIA for a while.
Who developed that last one?
I don't remember.
Oh, I should know. It's not Next Level Games, is it? It's one of those small kind of second-party Nintendo studios, but I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, I would count.
You're right. Next Level. It was
Next Level.
Yeah.
Okay. Neo JD, what are your pre-launch feelings on the medium? Is this game going to launch on time? It seems like it's been quiet even after the delay. I don't want to talk about it too much because we're going to talk about it in a minute. We're going to talk about it in not too long from now. I would say this: the last round of previews gave me pause. If you look at some of the previews, they're I wouldn't say they're as negative as previews get, but it has more than the usual amount of caveats. So generally the way previews are done in the gaming industry, in the games journalism industry, is you try to just state the facts about the game. You try not to share too much opinion about it because it's not finished and things can get fixed. And so generally, at least when I'm running editorial, how we would handle previews is it was just the facts. And then we'd use the last paragraph to share a couple maybe concerns that we had about what we played, or maybe something that we felt could be done in a different way, something like that. So you still want it to have some kind of editorial value, but you don't want to short shrift the developers because their product isn't done yet. So that's generally how preview coverage goes. But in the preview coverage for the medium, there are a lot more than just that couple notes in the last paragraph about it. So I really like the concept. This kind of goes back to what Matt was saying when talking about Itagaki, is like, how risky is the concept? This concept's kind of risky, which makes me interested in it. Otherwise, I don't think I would care that much. But the fact that it is kind of innovative, is doing something different with the dual realities thing, I think that gives it a chance. But based upon the previews that I've been reading over the last week or two, I guess I'm setting my expectations down a notch or two. It's the best way to put it. What about you, Matt? How do you feel about it? Are you excited about it?
I'm interested. I haven't really paid attention to it recently. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, January snuck up on me. Like a couple of times I've been like, oh God, like Christmas was like a month ago. Very weird. You know, I'm like, oh, Hitman's out tomorrow. Like,
yeah,
who knew? Like,
I'm sorry that we weren't able to talk about Hitman on today's episode. I know the review embargo went up today. It is one of the publishers that we do not get early code from, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to buy it and play it just like you guys, but we'll talk about it next Tuesday, which segues nicely into the actual end of the show. And I want to say before we go that the show will be every Tuesday going forward. Jared was able to be here today, and he does have Tuesdays open here or there. But as you guys saw last Thursday, if Jared can't be here, I'm just going to run the TriCaster and do the best I can. I want the show to be on Tuesdays, and I want it to be every Tuesday. So going forward, every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. One last question from Congrim before we break and then go to our fantasy draft. His question is, any hopes or thoughts on the Resident Evil showcase on Thursday? Looks like they're Mrs. X apparent in the recent trailer. Yeah, have you seen this, Matt? Everyone's freaking out about like the vampire queen.
The tall woman, yeah.
I don't know why. It's like I look at him like, why? Why do you guys?
There's a Twitter thirst for the tall lady.
Apparently,
it's a big deal.
I don't get it for whatever reason. But
I don't know, but Capcom knows. They've been playing it up on the official Twitter, and I mean, it's been a long time since we had a breakout Resident Evil character.
It's true.
I think it's good for them.
Like, I mean, I'll just say this: I'm really excited for Resident Evil Village. I liked the direction that Resident Evil 7 went in. I liked that it was going more towards like the settings that we saw in like Resident Evil 4 instead of just being in an urban environment with a mansion plopped down somewhere. I liked the type of horror that they went with in Resident Evil 7 as opposed to kind of the jump scary stuff that's in the more mansion-driven stuff. So I'm really excited for it. It really sucks that we can't show you guys the game. Capcom gives us strikes every time we show footage of Resident Evil Village. So we can't show it to you. It's really stupid.
No one can know about Resident Evil Village.
It's really absurd, man. Quiet. It's so absurd. You know what? Capcom just put out a new like YouTube / social media policy as well. And still, like, I was like, okay, I click it. I'm like, finally, they're going to be like, and you can use our trailers now to promote our games for free for us. Nope. They didn't change. So we still can't run footage of that. We still can't run footage of like any Devil May Cry stuff. Monster Hunter, we have to capture our own footage or otherwise we can't show that. It's really insane. But anyway, that's it for GameFace episode 243. You guys can't tell because I'm sitting here a little low, but I'm rocking one of our new shirts today. We are running low on the sizes on the fringes. So if you want one, head to sifted.net/store. If you're a small, you're a medium, you're a double XL or a triple XL, you're literally going to race somebody to the store to get one. We also have an awesome sticker pack full of 6 vinyl stickers you can buy for $8. It's a great way to support us if you want to and get something in return other than our awesome content. As I said, stick around here on the stream. We're gonna dip to black for a couple minutes. We got to get kind of our production ducks in a row to set up for our fantasy draft. But after a couple minutes, we'll be back. So maybe get a drink, hit the bathroom or whatever. I'm guessing it'll be 3 to 5 minutes until we're ready to go for the fantasy draft. But anyway, look, if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Denfire. If you want to find Sifted on Twitter, which you should, especially if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to it on one of the 6 like podcast services GameFace is on, you should follow at Sifted Games. That way you'll know when we're going live on Twitch. That way you'll know everything that's going on with the site when we release new products in our store for merch and things like that. And then you can find Matt on Twitter at MKyle. So on behalf of Jared, who I am very thankful is back for this episode, and Matt, I'm Shane. GameFace is up and out.